This area is the Four Dunes at Southwest Rocks, and it's an area we've been working for many years doing Bitou bush. It was originally very densely infested with Bitou. Most of the large plants had been controlled, and about a year ago we got a fire through here which was not a planned fire. And the advantage for us is that this follow-up that we're going to do today is probably one of the last we'll have to do for a while, because the fire stimulates all the seed bank, both the native and the Bitou bush, and by going through and removing all the small seedling Bitous, we hope that we will have this area stable for many years to come. One of the issues for us coming through here, and we have about 25 people here today, is that yes, there are a lot of Bitou bush, but there are also a lot of small native plants coming up together. And for instance, here's a small Bitou going in amongst a Stephania, a little snake vine. The critical thing for identifying a seedling Bitou bush is you have hairy new growth right in the tips of the leaves. And one of the other things, if you crush it, it smells a bit like carrots, but that's a bit variable. This, fairly obviously, the leaf of the Stephania is quite a different shape to the Bitou. This plant here, which is a Hibertia scandens, and Hibertia scandens can look very similar, slightly darker in this case, but you do get it in a paler green, but it never has that white hairy new growth. It also has a more reddish stem than the Bitou bush. The Bitou bush has a bit of red on it, but as you can see, if that's growing next to that young Hibertia, it could be very easily confused. Now here we've got a young Banksia coming up, a Bitou bush, a Banksia, and an acacia over here. So working in an area like this, it's very important that we don't damage the native plants, but that we do get this Bitou out, because the Bitou has the ability to grow much faster than both the Banksia and the acacia, and very quickly, if you have half a dozen seedlings of Bitou around here, they very quickly shade the native plants out. So what we're doing today is giving a fantastic boost to the native plant recruitment. So this area has been burnt recently. We've had 2 fires in the last couple of years here, and hence we ended up with this large open area of blady grass, which is not the normal plant community we'd expect on this front dune. It's a product of having quick fires in quick succession. And what we're trying to do is to encourage the woody plants such as the acacias, the Banksias, some of these native vines, to cover this area and shade out the blady grass and eventually get a much more resilient dune vegetation growing. So not only does blady grass like this open condition, but so does the Bitou bush. And if you look over in this section here, you can see dead wattle, the dead wattle here, but underneath you'll see there's quite a few young Bitou bush. What we do is we hold them down low and just hand remove them. But if we didn't hand remove these, what would happen is the Bitou bush would gradually dominate this area, and yes, it would crowd out the blady grass, but it also crowds out the seedling wattles which are coming up underneath here as well. So what we're trying to do is shift the balance towards the native plants rather than the Bitou bush. This is a Bitou bush, and here is a very similar looking leaf of a scaevola. And many people walking through, one of our main aims of training people in here is to pick the difference, because this scaevola, Bitou bush, very similar. This is Bitou. You can see the hairy growth that we've been talking about. The leaf does have slight indentations on them, but they're irregular, and the leaf is relatively soft. Now if we look at the scaevola leaf, for instance, this one has 3 distinct indentations there. These can be less distinct on some leaves, but it also has a much rougher surface on the leaf, and the veins are not quite as pronounced as they are on the Bitou bush. If this one's in flower, it has a blue fan flower as opposed to the Bitou bush, which has got a yellow daisy flower. And what happens often is that a bird eats the seed of both the Bitou bush and the scaevola, and so you may get both plants coming up out of the same bird dropping. Interesting how the fire was quite patchy. You can see where the fire came through here and burnt the edges of some of these bushes, but there are other bushes that are still quite healthy. But this is a fascinating thing for me to see, is that this very large patch of bare sand, I remember this used to be a huge clump of Bitou bush. Because it was so much dead material, it really burnt quite fiercely. But the great thing for us is that when I look on the ground here, we've got small banksias, we've got Hibertius gambia, we've got lots of little Bitou bush seedlings like there. But right next to the Bitou bush seedlings, I've got an acacia, I've got various native grasses coming up. So this area, once we weed this and get rid of these few little Bitou bush seedlings, it's going to come back fantastically well with the whole suite of the native plants that grow around here. And we see a few of these patches through here, and that tells me these were once big patches of Bitou bush. So very reassuring to see that.
The seedlings are everywhere. It stabilises this sand dune beautifully, which was the reason it was brought in by the Soil Conservation Service to stabilise the dunes after sand mining. Unfortunately, it's the perfect weed too, because it can grow in any environment and has very few predators. So it's looked like a great idea when it was brought in, but it's proven to be a real disaster. It'll grow in shade, in full sun. It can scramble, climb, or grow as a shrub. So that's its problem. It's just too good. It's too efficient. It's the perfect plant that turns into a weed.
This is the biggest one I've found on today's work, and it's growing in an unburnt area, and you can still pull it out, but you can see the way it deeply roots, and they'll get to be 10 times the size of that. And some of the really big ones, when they're in dense stuff, it's sort of one bush, one man, 1 hour.
Behind the beach, on the protected hind dunes, literal rainforest is starting to develop. It's a great example of what happens in a rainforest. You've got a big tea tree which has collapsed here, and underneath we're getting lots of little rainforest plants coming up. We've got the electrion over here, more electrion. This is a little beach electrion, which is a great little plant, and these all fill up the gaps in the canopy, and that also helps to keep out the Bitou bush. We've got very few weeds on the ground, but lots of little rainforest seedlings. Banksias, tea trees, tuckaroos. So this will develop into quite a healthy closed canopy. And over here we've got muttonwood, Rapania. Behind us we've got more of the tall tuckaroos. And the good thing for us is when we get a developed canopy, it shades the ground and we get virtually no Bitou bush coming back.